air. He'll come from glory, spread forth his great wings of power, and the little eagles will hook their bills into there and fly away into glory with him. Deep calling to the deep. Many of you in here believe in divine healing. Do you? You believe in divine healing. The very reason that you believe in divine healing proves there is a divine healing.
It all started with a dream. A seed that worked its way into the heart. Not every dream comes to fruition. Dreams call for care, work, passion, perseverance. Dreamers are made of different stuff. There's something in their eyes. A resistance to the normal tide. Gordon Lindsay was such a dreamer. God planted a seed into his heart that grew into something more than he could have ever imagined. In 1948, Gordon Lindsay saw the need to report what God was doing in the church around the world. As a result, he started the Voice of Healing magazine.
Gordon Lindsay was a man that wanted to be in on what God was doing. And as a younger man, he gave up everything over and over and over to follow that dream in the effort of being in on what God was doing. And he began helping other ministries that he saw doing marvelous things.
Dad was wondering, what do you have for me? Well, people were desperate after the World War. Healing really caught the attention of America, and Dad started having tent revivals and meetings across the United States. People were desperate at that time, wanting to understand about the supernatural power of God, and I got to see those miracles as a little child.
The whole family went around in a little pulled trailer. He brought his family with him a lot of the time, and they traveled with him and to these different tent crusades. But he realized that the best benefit he could be to the whole Voice of Healing movement, or to the whole healing movement, was to follow them around. He believed that wherever God's doing something, he wanted to be there too.
There were a number of evangelists doing this. He became friends with Oral Roberts and T.L. Osborne and other great ministries. And so as a result of this magazine, he began publishing the stories and telling about when the next revivals of these various evangelists were. So that started in 1948, the magazine just simply sharing what God is doing across the nation and eventually across the world.
In July of 1970, Gordon and Frida Lindsay saw the need to impart apostolic teaching and equip the church with ministers who would preach the purity of God's Word. Christ for the Nations Institute was born.
What was going on in the 70s was the charismatic renewal had just really taken full bloom. And people from every denomination began to receive the infilling of the Holy Spirit and speak in other tongues. And Gordon Lindsay saw a need, not only for young people, but for people who were in these denominational churches wanting to get equipped in the Spirit-filled life. So he began to have seminars in the late 60s. From 1966 to 1970, they had monthly seminars and summer seminars and all that. And then in 1970, he began the Institute here.
When my father did start in 1970, the school, I think there were 50 students, and he poured into them the faith message. In fact, there's some very strong ministries that came out of those first 3 years. I know that they received something from my father.
On a Sunday afternoon, only 3 years after the start of the Institute, tragedy struck.
I got on a plane on Thursday, arrived here Thursday evening, saw my mother and father, and on Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, I went to the campus congregation, which was in the main auditorium, and I remember just sitting there and saying, I know I'm in the complete will of God.
Mom's up at the pulpit sharing testimonies or announcements, and suddenly there's a roar. She says, she hears something, kind of gasping out there, and a couple people run forward. Dad's sitting back there, and he dies and goes to heaven right there.
I guess when Gordon passed away is when we came back from Youth of the Mission in Europe. And I did not realize what a heavy load that Mom Lindsay was carrying. And so when he died, she was beside herself. She just laid on the floor for I don't know how long, hours, days, and just cried, what am I going to do? What are we going to do?
I knew that the Lord had brought me back because I was not expecting, I just at the last minute decided to come back to the States. So I was able to help my mother. My mother was in very serious confusion. What do I do? What do I do? And she said, I just don't think I can get out of bed. I said, Mother, can you just make it today? And she said, yes, I can make it today. I said, well, just make it one day at a time.
After much debate and opposition to a woman leader, the board of directors came to the decision that Frida Lindsay would become the new president of Christ for the Nations Global Ministries.
Well, there was one gentleman that was working at Christ for the Nations that decided he was going to be the president. But the board, the Christ for the Nations board, met together and they elected Mother as the president. So that was the end of that. I'm sure that there have been some people who were not happy to see a woman in charge of the school. But Mom Lindsay, as they call her, I think she didn't have to really prove herself. She just did it, and the school grew, and the missions grew, and so whatever people had to say, I think it just went in one ear and out the other.
Frida Lindsay just would not take no for an answer. When she got it in her heart and got it in her mind, she started speaking it out her mouth, and she believed that the things that she said were going to come to pass. She believed Mark 11:23 and 24. Whatsoever things you desire when you pray, believe that you receive them and you shall have them. This woman lived this. She lived it. And when she talked to donors, she talked to her friends, she just wouldn't take no for an answer. And the Lord used her in monumental ways.
Mom Lindsay proved to be a mighty woman of faith, and under her guidance, CFN Ministries flourished. The following are highlights of what God has done and is currently doing around the world through Christ for the Nations Ministries.
What we're known for in the world really is our music. So we had a tremendous impact on the music world, as you know, that our tapes, our worship tapes, were the first tapes to be sent around the world. Nobody was taping worship songs. They were taping other kinds of songs, but not worship music. We taped our worship music, sent it around the world. The very first ones to do that.
Christ for the Nations is more than an institute, certainly. It is a global ministry. We have the international ministries. We have an association of Bible schools, over 40 schools around the globe in various countries like the Amazon, in Peru. We have a Bible school. We have one in Germany, several in India, one in Sri Lanka. They are numerous and training men and women of God for the work of the ministry. In our Association of Bible Schools, one of our premier Bible schools is in Germany, and it was established over 40 years ago, and they're just now celebrating their 25th anniversary in their new facility, which is in Bad Gandersheim, Germany. In our Literature for the Nations program, Gordon Lindsay, the founder of Christ for the Nations, wrote 10 powerful discipleship booklets, just phenomenal works. And we've taken those discipleship booklets, and they have been taken over the years, the decades, and printed in over 100 different languages to date. And we have printed those by the millions, really, and distributed those in the nations. There have been over 60 million pieces of literature that have gone out of Christ for the Nations over the last 40 years. Christ for the Nations International Ministries also has a long-term program called Native Church. And what that program does is to help put roofs on churches around the world.
Dad had a special interest in Israel, and I see that the Lord has now given me that. And just recently I says it's time to build a new prayer room, Frontlines Israel, right here off of our auditorium, so that people can be in there praying for Israel and for the world, and our students here that come. So we want always that our students will be connected with Israel.
I thank God for the people who have contributed in all kinds of ways. It's been a cooperative effort on the part of many, many people. We talk about Mom Lindsay all the time. We all call her Mom because, well, she is really the mother of this ministry and the mother of us all in some ways. But she didn't do it alone. She did it with lots and lots of great partners and lots of great help.
What does one do with a heart arrested by a dream? It starts with a whisper and then turns into a message so consuming that not even the most powerful can quiet it. No one could have anticipated the amount of growth from something so small. The Lindsays were pioneers, going where none had gone before, listening to that still small voice that guides us down the path of the unknown.
Just because you have in you a seed that's germinating doesn't mean you know all the details, but it does mean if you get it in your heart that you need to do something for God, He will bring people into your life to speak to you and give you direction as to where He thinks you need to go. And you just follow that by faith. Everything about knowing God and walking with God is a walk of faith. You don't do it because you know, you do it because you believe.
How do you be a person of faith? You don't give up. You never give up. You always keep on keeping on, no matter how difficult the situation looks.
I see a unity in this institute like I've never seen before. I see a generation of young people coming to this institute that are so hungry for God. I have news for the world. This next generation is not going to hell in a handbasket. This next generation is hungry for God.
If the past is a shadow of what is to come, then we have to look back to truly see all that He has done and all that He is going to do. For in these days we will see the glory of our Father. For we are the chosen ones, the blood-washed people of the Most High. Many will fall, but we will press on. In Him and through Him we find our being, making way for those who would follow, to pioneer again.